Hello, everybody. Welcome to On the Homefront. My name is John Murphy. I'm very happy to share some time with you. However, you're catching us on live radio. Maybe you're on YouTube. We could be on WILI AM or WICH as well in Norwich. But right now we have a special show for you as we start out the new year in July in terms of the brand new year for the program. This program will be in 3 segments. 2 are going to air today, and it's going to look at other programs that we have here to give you an idea of local radio, why people are here, what their programs are about. I'm very happy to mention that the group that owns the station, Hall Communications, they have 6 radio stations in our region, and they've tried to increase their local talk shows to meet what they see as a growing vacuum in local journalism. And while these shows are not hard news that you might be used to in other formats, these are talk shows that focus on the same issues with people from the community. It's another kind of radio, and I'm really happy to be part of it here at WILI. We're here for our show on the Homefront every Wednesday from 5 to 6. A short while ago, they actually doubled their hours, so now it's Monday through Friday from 4 to 6. And the people sitting next to me are radio veterans who joined us a few weeks ago. They had many years on WTIC AM in Hartford, and they're new members of this new block from 4 to 5. So what we're going to do today is look at 3 of our shows and give the producers a chance to tell you more about why they care about local radio and what they want to share with you, why they're here. And hopefully it'll connect to some of your interests because these shows have a wide variety. We're going to have Susan Johnson and Dennis O'Brien for our 3rd segment later. They've had a show here for many years. Let's talk about it. We'll talk with them later on. And after this 1st segment, we're going to focus on another show that's been here for a long time called The Neighborhood with Ernie and Anita Eldridge. They've been here for 10 years. So the show today is all about local radio and how we're trying to keep it alive here in Eastern Connecticut. And I want to again thank our 1st segment guest to be here. Garden Talk is the program that happens to precede me every Wednesday. And we have Len Giddix here as well as Lisa Napolitano. So thank you for being our 1st guest, and thanks for the good work you're doing here at WILI.
Thanks for the invitation, John.
So maybe a kind of a launching pad was you've been doing the show now since 2001. What is it about radio that was your medium of choice? And then we'll get into your topics and, the whole idea of the environment and gardening. But first of all, why radio today?
Well, for the first thing, John, is look at this face. It's a face for radio.
Oh, yes.
And we could show up dirty.
Yeah. Well, I do wear pants most of the time.
Most of the time,
I
correct.
do.
Actually, it started back in 2000. I happened to be the Connecticut editor for People, Places, and Plants magazine, which was a regional gardening magazine, no longer alive. And the first thing that the editor-in-chief said was, hey, what you got to do is you got to get the Blue Book, the Connecticut Blue Book, and write every radio station and say, I'm available if you want a segment or whatever.
As a guest for a show.
As a guest for a show, correct. And, sometimes you get more than you ask for. They happen to need or want a gardening show on Saturdays, talk live, call in. And they said, would you like to do that? And my editor-in-chief got all excited about it because it was a huge station at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so I said, yeah, well, I'm a little scared because, 2 hours, I don't have all the answers. So I knew Lisa from way back, and she owned a nursery before that. And I said, Lisa,
talk about hands
would you
on.
like to do a garden show? And what did you say?
I said, sure. And I thought it was one. I thought it was a
Ended
single
up to be
show.
20 years.
There you go. It's
Yeah,
that
that
power
was-
of radio. You
It
get
was
locked in.
Yeah. No, it was fun afterwards. I when I started out, I was a little apprehensive about the questions that might come in and how I would answer. And do I know the answer? And you know what? You can say, I don't know.
Isn't that a beautiful thing?
And we had a computer, so while he's stalling, I'm looking it up.
So what color is that flower? And how tall does it grow?
Yeah.
Well, now you have your phone. But see, it's the honesty of saying,
Oh,
I don't know at all.
I
don't
used
know.
to show up every week with a bag of books for years and years.
Yeah.
I had like several resources. And I'd be flipping through the resources because I knew them. And
Sure.
he'd be stalling. He's really good at
Right.
stalling. So
You know,
it was good.
That's how Lisa and I learned, and we've been gardening all our lives.
Right.
But when you make a mistake or you don't know, you look it up. You find out what you did wrong.
Yeah.
And you know, over the years, over 50 years, you start to learn things and remember them. Now I'm starting to forget them.
Well, that's why you have Lisa.
That's right.
Now I'm forgetting, but I'm learning new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
The garden
Well,
never stops teaching you.
Well, that's one thing. After 50 years, the dirt is still the dirt. But what people do to the dirt is different now.
Oh, my
There are
gosh.
so many more chemicals in our soil.
Actually,
I mean,
things are getting better. When I first started
Tell me.
my nursery back in the 90s, so I started working in the nursery industry.
And
for
where
a
was your
little
nursery?
orga-
Where
it
was
was
your
in
nursery?
Hebron. It was
Oh,
a little
Hebron.
organic nursery.
Close
I worked
by.
for a woman, and she was organic. It was very unusual. It was 1992, and I passed a nurseryman's course, and I was already leaning towards organic because I'd gotten quite sick, and so it was helping me.
Yeah.
And she belonged to the environmental working group and all. Remember, now we get this stuff on our phones. Back then, it was like a monthly newsletter you would get. So, and every day somebody walked into that nursery and asked me a question I didn't know, and all the information was behind me.
Yeah.
And it was invaluable. All those years, that was my education, was going there.
So tell me why you're optimistic when I know there are so many
Because
toxic chemicals that are
There's
available.
way more interest in people and awareness that people
Okay.
are actually saying, wait a minute. And they didn't do that back in the 90s. It was a hard sell in the 90s. Today, people are going, you know what? Stuff's going on. I don't feel right. My dog is sick. My kid is sick. This is going
Yeah.
on. And people are starting to ask questions. They didn't ask that in the 90s.
That's good to hear. That's really nice to hear because that's kind of a quiet thing that keeps things positive. Because if you're in a neighborhood, what you put in your lawn goes to your neighbor's well. It's not like you have your private water supply.
Well,
It
I
just goes
I
down.
was told once, well, I don't have to worry. I have city water. It's like,
Oh, yeah?
and they were dumping 7. I mean, just on their dogs everywhere.
Which is now not legal. Isn't it?
See? Yeah.
So
Think about Rachel Carlson and what kind of trouble she got into in the early 60s, right?
You know, that was the big trigger to all of this. And that was what, back in the 50s?
Yeah.
50s, 60s?
Yeah.
And it's only...
it's taken a half a
Right.
century.
The American Dream lawn, which is the English lawn, those expanses of green, weedless lawns, are still a status symbol for the rich. Rich and richer. And
Well, like perfectly manicured.
oh, definitely.
Yeah, I understand.
It's keeping up with the Joneses. But now keeping up with the Joneses, you might be keeping up with the Joneses by putting clover in your lawn, which in the 60s was a very common part of the lawn mixture.
Until
Not
they
anymore.
learned about how to do broadleaf weed control.
Yeah. So now it's people are going back to something that's actually simpler, easier, and the lawn care industry is $1 billion industry in this state, and it's hard to fight against them because of the advertising and the stigma that they represent.
And people like that program. I mean, they sold the program and the advertising, and they believe the advertising. So.
But now there are organic care companies that will treat your lawn organically.
I see the word more often. I see more products. I don't know about quality, but I see more people trying.
The quality is excellent if you have the right people.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
okay, so we're on the radio right now here, but this is about a show called Garden Talk, which is on before me 4 to 5 on Wednesdays. And what we're doing this week for On the Homefront is looking at some of our shows that we have here on the station to give you a better idea behind the scenes of why the shows are here and what the producers are trying to accomplish with your time. What have you noticed over the years? Because we talked about the soil and like the environmental things, but now like the radio side. Do you notice any changes in the questions you get or any audience reaction over the years? Because, radio, they say is struggling today, but many people think the local level is one way where radio is going to get through a lot of changes about the music industry.
There is one overwhelming question that for the last 24 years we've been asked, and that is, why doesn't my hydrangea bloom?
And it's still a big question.
Why doesn't my hydrangea bloom?
And it's just
And, you cut it back in the fall because it has those nice sticks that stick up and they're ugly, and you cut them back, but the buds for next spring are right there. Or, you know what? You go down to the Cape on vacation or to Rhode Island, Long Island, and it's just so beautiful. They're strikingly blue and white and every color of the rainbow. And you say, I want one of those. So you bring it up here, and it's a different zone up here. It's colder here. And what the colder zone does is that it kills the buds. All you need is one night of zone 5.
Oh, yeah. These things are fragile. Now, how about not just the temperature, but also the soil, acid soil?
Well, Connecticut soils are normally acidic, so you can go up and down the streets and see this year is spectacular for blue hydrangeas. Because we had a mild
winter.
Yeah, we had a mild winter. They're as blue as your shirt right now, and they're gorgeous. Yeah. And I haven't seen that in quite a few years.
Yeah, not a long time.
But naturally, hydrangeas are one of those plants where if the soil is sweet, like out in the Midwest, they'll be producing pink flowers. Here in Connecticut, if it's been in the soil for over a year, it's going to have blue flowers. And the problem at the nursery level is that, they run the grower runs out of the hydrangeas that he's grown all year long locally, and then he's got to buy new ones. Well, those came in from the Midwest, and they're flowering pink, and nobody wants a pink hydrangea. But you got to explain to people that it's going to be fine.
It'll be blue.
It'll turn blue.
What are some of the common mistakes people make that they can avoid that would impact their neighbors or the soil or plants? Things people just, they don't know yet. They're trying to get involved, and they make mistakes.
Water their lawn in the morning or in the evening.
After the sun.
You should be watering it first thing in the morning.
First thing.
And early. Wake up at 5, put the sprinkler on. But people often water in the afternoon. Probably the worst one. It's bright, sunny, it's just evaporating. Most of it's going away. And the plant doesn't get the benefit. So that's probably the biggest one, I would think.
Well, I think the biggest mistake that everybody makes, I've done it, is to go to a nursery and say, oh, that's a beautiful plant. My gosh, I have to have it. So you buy the plant, and you don't know where you're going to put it. It's like everybody else. It does well in certain conditions, and if you don't have those conditions, it's not going to do well. It's going to suffer and linger and look horrible, and you're going to be digging it up. And so
plant in the right place.
Or pick the place and then buy the plant for that space.
Location.
It's in real estate. It's the same as it is in the garden.
Well, this is a good way to wrap up this kind of a segment. The program is called Garden Talk with Len Giddix and Lisa Napolitano every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, just before on the Homefront here on WILI, AM 1400 and FM 95.3. Also, the radio station has a playlist on YouTube, and you'll be able to go to WILI Radio, and the whole channel has all the shows that we have available. So if you miss a show, you can subscribe and get every new show and stay connected to your garden. And we kind of gave you a taste today of the approach they have. They're really concerned about the individual, how people at home can do better, how to take care of the land a little better, and how to enjoy plants in ways that maybe you haven't found out yet. But it's here every Wednesday, and I'm very glad to have you here as part of the team, and I thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting
us,
John.
John.
Great. Okay, good luck with the show in the weeks ahead.
Thanks so much.
All righty, we're going to take a short break and come right back. We're going to travel on Route 66, and we'll be back. Okay, we're back on the home front, and this week we're taking a look at some of the programs we have here at WILI AM 1400 and 95.3. Hall Communications has a number of radio stations in our region, and here at WILI they've doubled the primetime afternoon information programming. Now it's from 4 to 6 every day with different shows, all locally based, and all focusing on different aspects of life in our region. So I'm really happy to share these shows. They're on YouTube. They're also, of course, live on the radio station. They're also rebroadcast on WECS and Willimantic. Some of them are repeated there. And also public access, Spectrum Channel 192 airs many of the shows as well. So the whole idea is to get guests to connect to you to share information throughout the year. We have a lot of trouble today with local journalism struggling to stay alive. There's a lot of information. Life goes on. And when journalism is trouble, we're trying to have local radio to fill in some of the gap. So I'm really happy to have some time right now with Ernie Eldridge and Anita. They've been doing the show now for 10 years, The Neighborhood, each week. They're on the air on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 6. So thank you, first of all, for years of good radio service and for being here today.
Well, I've listened to your show every week, and I remember you over at Eastern, and it's always a pleasure to be on the show with you. When I was the mayor of the town, we were up there a couple of times doing some music shows and stuff like that. So,
That's right. It was great to have you here in the house.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for asking us.
So, the whole idea is we're trying to give you an idea behind the microphone what people are trying to do to reach out to you. What's their story and how they're trying to reflect through their shows the people all around us. And we're trying to give airtime to guests sometimes who have things to say and they don't get a chance to get it out. So maybe you can go back 10 years. Let's start with your first early shows.
All right.
Because you've been a team from the beginning, right, Anita?
Correct.
So can you compare your early shows and the response to how things feel today, just in general?
Well, I know for myself, I was like totally nervous. I didn't know what to say. I was afraid I was going to say something wrong and Matt was going to have to hit the buzzer on me or something like that.
The Major Bowes hook.
That's right. So I didn't say an awful lot at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
She's changed that now, so, but she talks, we try to share the spot is what we try to do, John, it's, but myself personally, I'm born and raised here, so I'm a Wyndham boy, right across from Frog Pond, used to listen to all the croakers that they talk about on, the Battle of the Frogs, and we heard the battle all the time during the summer months as such, so, but I know Anita will agree with me, our show airs at the right time that people are driving home, and we get so many compliments on people saying, you know what, it's just nice to be able to listen to somebody talk and enjoy it, let's put it that way, and informative too. So
yeah, and sometimes we're really lighthearted about it. I mean, it's not a real serious topic, but sometimes it kind of comes across that way a little bit, but it's not a real controversial thing. So people are not going to pick up any road rage or anything from what they're listening to.
We're both elected officials. Like I said, I've been in service for 35 years probably.
Oh yeah,
between zone board of different hats, and Anita's the same way. She's been on zone board of she's been on board of finance for many years. So I was on zoning board I was on zoning board, and then I was on appeals, and then of course I was the mayor, and then I was a council member. I'm still a council member, but we don't bring politics into our show at all. It doesn't even show up at all on our show.
Well, I have to take a little exception to that, dear.
Okay.
Because every once in a while, we do remind people that there's a meeting that is important that is at the town hall.
Or go vote or something.
Go vote. But
that's part of our show.
That's part of just informing
If we
our
had
neighbors.
more local news, they'd be talking about that.
Agreed.
Right?
True.
That's
Agreed.
part
Yes.
of the fabric that we're losing today. People have lost touch with basic, everyday stuff they used to take for granted.
We're both involved in local items. Anita's the president of Rotary Club. I'm a member also. She's the president of the Jilson House Historic Society. We're members. So we're involved in the community. We want people to come to our programs. We want people to come to the museums. We want them to come to different places. So that's what our show is about. And I know Anita said when she talks sometimes about the show, what do you say about the show?
Well, our show is kind of like I'm having a conversation with a best girlfriend over the backyard fence. Just kind of sharing information and just having a great chat. That's all.
And the thing I like about talk radio these days, at least good talk radio, is that they're not throwing red meat anymore. There's so much talk radio that can be polarizing, or they have a particular point of view and they have something to sell, and they're not selling products or goods or services.
I understand what you're saying.
Right? So where is there a safe space for these conversations that don't involve who to vote for or who to vote against, but like, this is life.
Right.
So how do you bring it up in a way that people won't bring that polarity into it as a safe conversation? Now, with all these years of experience, when it works well, what is it that makes dialogue less heated and more productive over the years when you've had different examples? What makes it work, and when do you think that does it not work?
Well, I think we haven't had one that has not worked, I don't believe. Do you, Anita? I think all of them...
I don't think so.
No, not at all.
Right.
But I think the key is to make the person who is here comfortable, make them feel as though they're talking to us over the back fence. Not that they're on the radio and, oh my goodness gracious, what am I going to say?
And also that we're listening to what they have to say.
There you go. There's a big key. Absolutely that we're listening to what they have to say. So, and we have lots of people come on the show. And when we don't have someone, we're not as lucky as you. You always seem to have lots of guests that are lining up.
I make lots of phone calls.
Is that what you do? Okay. And we're just busy enough sometimes that we don't always get to, make the phone calls. But sometimes it's at the last minute. People say, "Oh, can I get on next week or something?" Yeah. We'll do something historical or something that happened that day or something like that. And people say, "Oh, that's kind of neat," my mom likes that type of stuff. I'm fortunate to have a mother. She's 97. She's going to be 98 this year, and she lives by herself. And she is very active, and she tells us if we did good or not. So, believe me.
Right. I have to give her a big thumbs up. You're on camera this week.
Exactly right. There you go.
Say hi to Ma. Say hi to Ma. Be sure to say hi to Ma. Now, let's say the last few years. How do you think... Well, let me just share my optimism.
Sure,
because I came here from New York in late 70s to work at UConn. And I fell in love with the land. And if you stay in this community long enough, something happens to you. Mm-hmm. But so many people are transient today that they're moving around. And if you do that, there may be things, there's a reason for that. But when you don't stay, you don't get to hear things. Mm-hmm. And I wondered, having been here so long, what are the things that people fall in love with that keep them here when there's so much pressure to go somewhere for, quote, more money or whatever it is that people seek, right? But there's something about this community that kept me here, even though I have friends elsewhere. Something about it.
It's and it's probably a cliche now, but the festivals we have, the different things that go on in town, the boombox parade, that's one of the simple things. People even come back for that.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But there's always, Third Thursday, the festivals. We have, all the museums. We have 3 museums, and actually now we've got like 4 museums or 5 museums. So it's a very historical area, and I think a lot of people enjoy the history of the town. And it's humorous. I mean, everything, that's part of it. I mean, that's part of the Battle of the Frogs. We were a laughing stock of the colonies, but we made we made well with it. Let's put it that way. And I think we still do the same thing. John, you had spoken before the show how you came in the 70s. I remember redevelopment. I remember the bad times. I remember the heroin town, the whole thing. Okay, I mean, and I was a politician I was part of politics at that time. It's a tough one to follow, okay?
Yeah,
but I think we've really made a rebound, and I think we're doing very well, honestly. I think we're doing very well. But we're getting older, so hopefully if we can keep the younger generation involved, and I think that's the hardest part is keeping them involved. But we try as a show to keep them involved, to be honest with you. So
it's nice to see a lot of the mom and pop shops and stores coming back to Main Street.
Absolutely, it's wonderful.
Because those were what the town used to be
places
all
like
about.
The Greenleaf shop.
Yeah.
So many of those small stores, and they are coming back in different ways.
Yeah, I'd love to see another surplus center. It was a great. I could get bell-bottom pants. You can't get bell-bottom pants anywhere now. Whether I'd wear them or not, I look like an old man with
a good set of canteens.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, the other thing though is. trying to get younger people on as guests because there's so many things that younger people are doing now, and a lot of it's through their phones to connect. But if you get involved enough, there's young people all over town trying to do different things, art projects, music projects.
Correct.
And that's part of the continuity that keeps the town vibrant.
Yeah.
So I guess I share the optimism too, having had some hard times. If people have been here long enough, they know the change is happening.
The key is with radio, you are here when it's happening. With a newspaper, you're yesterday's news. I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to bang any newspapers at all.
Right.
But when things happen, they happen. Here it is on the radio, on the AM. And I know they're I know they're saving the AM, and it's because it's here. If something totally falls apart, radio's still going to be here. You can still listen. When we had the power outages and we had the hurricane go through, tore down everything. Okay, people are saying, "How am I going to get any information?" Listen to the radio. Just turn on your battery operated radio and listen to it. You will find it there.
Yeah, that's right. Folks are a little too dependent on the web all the time, and that's great when it works. But when things get nasty, then you're in trouble.
Exactly right. Like I said, it's yesterday's news anywhere else. It's news here, and what's happening is happening. So.
Yeah. So we're going to end the show a little early today to make room for Red Sox coverage coming up in just a few minutes. This happens occasionally during the season, so I always say play ball, go, win every game possible. You need every win you can get, let me put it to you that way. But I want to thank Ernie and Anita Eldridge for being here. Their program is The Neighborhood. It's on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 6. It's part of that block we have here from 4 to 6, Monday through Friday. So we had a chance to give you an idea of their show, their spirit behind it, the information they're trying to share, and most of all, that they have an open door for you every week. If you have a story to share, they'll be happy to have you in the house here to share the good news. So thanks, and I wish you a great summer ahead.
Thank you. You as well.
You as well, yes.
Okay, welcome back to On the Homefront. We're going to continue our series of profiles of some of the shows we have here on WILI. The radio station recently has doubled its prime time support for local talk radio from 4 to 6, Monday through Friday. And we're going to do a number of segments with the producers of each of the shows to give you a really good idea of what's going on behind the microphone, why they're here with you each week, a little bit of the history of the show, and how each one of us is trying to keep local radio alive during a time when local journalism has been really compromised and very limited. Life goes on, even when journalism's not there to tell the stories. Life goes on anyway, and sometimes local radio is one of the last ways you can find out about what's happening right around your neighborhood. So that's why we're doing these shows. And right now I'm very happy to have Susan Johnson in the studio. I've known Susan for many, many years. She is also a co-producer with Dennis O'Brien of their program on Fridays, Let's Talk About It. But right now we have to send out some love to Dennis because he has COVID. So we're very sorry about that. That's why she has her mask on today. So Dennis will be here in spirit, and maybe we'll have him back later in the fall if we do this again. But Susan, I'm glad you're here because your show has a long history now. 1998. We're doing this in 2024. So this team has been here doing local radio through all kinds of changes. And that's part of the fun, that you've stayed with it because you got enough feedback and interest to realize this is a way for you to learn as much as you help people learn, right?
Well,
that's
thank
part
you.
of the fun.
That's right. Thank you so much for that. And 1998 is when we started. But then, and I was asked originally by Colin Rice to be part of this show that would provide opposing views. And I was there with Ellen Giordano for a couple of years. Then I ran for office, and then I got bounced off. And it was Ellen Giordano and Harry Carboni who took over.
That's right.
And they were on for a couple of years more, and then they decided they did 2 shows, Thursday and Friday. And I think they felt like that was a bit much, and so we got the Friday show back, and we were thrilled to be able to bring our show back, me and Dennis, and we brought in guests that are active in the community. Our show is about everything that's going on in the community, the state, and the federal government from time to time. But mostly we focus on what's going on here, how the governments work, how the interaction between the state and the local government works, and just exactly what's going on. So I feel like my job is the state rep. Our job is as lawyers. It's nice to be able to make sure the community knows as much information as we can bring back to the community in our show on Fridays at 5.
One thing I really like about the show is the fact that Susan is part of the legislature. And except when the few weeks of the campaign season runs, there are certain times when campaigns are running that candidates can't be on shows like this, just for a short window. But the thing that I love about it is that when the campaigning is all done, it's about the work, getting it done. And that's when I wish more senators and reps would have shows of their own so they can really drill down the way these folks do every week, because it gives you a chance to communicate beyond a short news story, right? It's more deep than that.
It is. And I just want to say how thrilled I am that we have WILI here in Windham, a great radio station, something that is a community asset. And it's something that we really are blessed to have. And one of the reasons you don't have as many shows is because many of the communities don't have local radio. So we are lucky. We've got AM and FM WILI radio, 1495.3 here, and 98.6 over there. And we're lucky. We have great radio contact. And the other thing that we do, and that we've been very thrilled about over the years, is to get these radio shows videoed so that they can actually play on cable access, which is supposed to also provide community information. The original Telecommunications Act of 1996 said, oh, you're supposed to do this for the community. This is something that you should do. So one of the things that we have also worked at is trying to make sure this show goes on cable access. And also we have worked a lot of the time to have a TV show, cable access show, right, a couple times a month. Although once COVID happened, it became harder for us to do that. And streaming also is an issue now because many people stream. Yep. And to be able to get into that technology with our radio shows, which we do somewhat with because we have YouTube.
That's the beautiful thing, is you can have your show here on the radio, and I can watch it on YouTube on my own anytime. If you catch it live, it's wonderful. Live radio is really the most fun for us, but as long as you get the show and the stories, that's what counts, and that's why it's so cool now.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I put it on my website at the Capitol, because I want to make sure people see what our community's doing. And from time to time, I have other legislators on this show and talk about their communities. Or if we have a state senator on, like Senator Flexer, we would talk about this community and the 29th Senatorial District. So we had Greg Haddad this last time, who represents the Mansfield area, and he does amazing work, and he is really detail-oriented in the university systems, which we have lots of universities.
He's very involved with higher ed issues.
Oh, yes, excellent.
Totally involved.
Well, he's the chairman of the Higher Education Committee, and so for the House, and so we have colleges out here, and Yukon, Eastern, and now Quinebaug Valley community colleges back here on Main Street in Willimantic. We have so many educational opportunities here that it's something that we should be incredibly proud of. And I'm hoping that we, during this season where we are not in the legislature now, but we're out in the community more, that we will actually be out there talking about what's available here for people. The connection between the universities and places like Electric Boat or Pratt & Whitney or Sikorsky Aircraft, making sure we have those engineering degrees coming right out and getting to work and placed. All these vacancies that we have the manufacturing pipeline that has been developed over the years in Eastern Connecticut, which is really a great thing. So we have a lot of opportunity here and a lot of chances for people to come here, get those educations, and go to work right here in these great places that we have that pay excellent wages.
By the way, I want to mention, in case you've just joined us, I'm speaking today with Susan Johnson, who is one of the co-producers of Let's Talk About It. It's one of our programs here on WILI in the afternoons. Dennis Johnson is not with us today. He's
O'Brien.
not well. He's got, I'm sorry, Dennis O'Brien. Wow. That's talk about a slip like that. Anyway, Dennis O'Brien is here in spirit today. We wish him well. They've been doing the show since 1998. And I just want to mention public access, because Susan mentioned Spectrum had a real challenge with COVID, and their studio operations were pretty much shut down for a few years because they couldn't do the normal training that they used to do. Well, they've come back now. This July, we had Mike Sweet and Adam here a few weeks ago. In July, they're beginning their training program, and it's a way for community members to learn video production, to be part of a crew to produce shows, and learn how to do their own video for their own content, their own development. So this is a great community resource that's coming back after a long delay. And if you just contact them, you'll be able to find out more. Just go to Charter Spectrum Public Access. Do a search on that. You'll find out how to contact them. But it's a great resource. I know many of our shows here air there as well, and some of them air on WECS as well. So it's a way to get you just connected to our guests for the stories to get to you. Now, let me ask you two things, Susan, because you talk about so many aspects of living that you touch on. Two topics that I've covered a lot that have been very stressful for people are the growth of tenant unions and the changes in healthcare delivery. I've had you on once or twice about that with the Wyndham United to Save Our Healthcare Coalition. They've been on the show a while. But the questions are, how do you think people are being informed by media to be maybe better connected? Because landlord relations with tenants is very stressed today. People are going through the law that was, they tried to get a no-fault eviction for landlords to evict tenants when their leases were up. And so there's stresses around the state over tenants, and they're organizing. There's a union here, there's one in Putnam. And I wonder what you've heard from other groups that are struggling with the lack of housing, the affordability of housing, and how the relations with landlords, which can be very tenuous with the tenants, and when the tenants can't do what they need to do, the landlord also suffers because they don't have the resources they need to maintain their properties. And it kind of cuts both ways. And it's part of everyday life for people that are stuck in the middle. And I just wonder what you touch on with your conversations.
The first thing is that we have in the legislature passed legislation to make it mandatory for every single town with 25,000 people or more to have a fair rent commission. So this is something that we've worked on very, very hard.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And so fair rent commissions are a must. And the reason they're a must is because the relationships between landlords and tenants have changed immeasurably. It used to be where most of the landlords were owning a few houses here and there in a town. They were pretty much known by everybody, and the properties were owned by, small businessmen. This has changed now because private equity firms are buying up properties all over the place.
They are.
And they are, you can't access them because they are not being registered in the town halls the way they should be. So when there's a violation of the housing code or building code, it makes it very difficult for the towns to do the enforcement, which makes it so that the properties that these private equity firms own actually fall into disrepair, creating kind of a mess in the community. So it really, you don't want to have properties that are deteriorating.
That's right.
In your community, because it really makes the community look bad. And you don't want it deteriorating because you don't want people to be renting from somebody who's going to cause you to have some type of an allergy to mold because they're not fixing the leaky stuff, or they have some other problem with not picking garbage up like they should.
Yep.
So there are a number of reasons why we need to really drill down on the enforcement of the housing and building codes here.
Yeah.
The other aspect is that we have really worked hard to try and make sure that historic building codes are being enforced. And I'm going to make a proposal this session to create a regional housing and building code official be hired. I hope to get the money. So I'm going to try and get the money to have the state pay for them for the region, for the councils of government. Each region would have a historic building housing code official, and make sure that the codes are being enforced in these places where people cherish their historic buildings. And sometimes what they do is they put too many units in, and then they create a problem in terms of the building, and then the building deteriorates, and because they haven't followed the code. So it really will make sense for us to be able to make sure that they do that. And if the landlord is resistant, then what will happen is I hope I'll write the law so that they can actually make sure that the building and housing codes are enforced, and that they, if they can't afford the fixing of the building, then we have community development block grant money that could be used and lien the property in accordance with the needs for the fixing. So I'm hoping to get that through, and I think a lot of people, it'll stop some of these buildings that have been deteriorating that are historic. So that's another aspect. It also will create a situation where we're not spending millions and millions of dollars on certain aspects of renovation of historic buildings. So I'm hoping that we can deal with that in that way. And of course, it's a very complicated issue in terms of landlord-tenant law, in terms of people who own property and they rent them. On the one side, you might have a property that is, and I made sure that this didn't happen, where landlords, are retiring now, and they want to sell their buildings. And in order to sell the building, they might be a 2 or 3 family house or a single family home. You want to make sure that they're able to sell the building. And if they can't have the tenant leave, then that's going to make it very, very hard for them to get to the point where they need to be able to transition into retirement. So you have to be able to analyze the whole spectrum and make sure that we take care of everybody.
Well, that's how it sounds like people get lost digging into the weeds, but it's everyday life stuff when it's not working right, and it's very hard when everyday life is messed up, and that's when you can't have things fixed fast enough. There's another side of the coin, is something that I've covered here for many months, is Cargill Mills in Putnam, which is a historic mill that was renovated by a large group owner, converted into condominium units, I guess, that were sold, and they found out permits were issued before enough testing was done. They found lead everywhere. And it took them a real long time to get the local town and the local health district to do the testing to prove the fact that their kids were getting sick. And they finally had testing results. It was so bad the EPA got involved and did an inquiry. And it was an example of the local authority struggling with itself and not doing the job when people were in trouble. And I just wondered, as a representative, you're on the focus point when things work well or when they don't work well with accountability. People sometimes don't have the authority to do what somebody's asking, and sometimes they don't for their own reasons.
Well,
how does that work out? Because it's difficult and awkward every time.
Well, every single town is, I call them, they're municipal states.
Yes, 169.
169 municipal states.
It's unbelievable.
And they don't share, and they don't want anybody telling them what to do. And so when you propose something that's statewide, you run into difficulty with enforcement issues.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you really need to make sure the towns have the resources to do the enforcement.
That's right.
So, and all these are town expenditures. So code officials, housing code, building code, making sure that the water is, these are all local issues.
Yeah.
And these are things that the taxpayers pay for. So it's something that in some ways the state has overreaching authority in terms of how say the eviction laws are put together and that sort of thing. But enforcement of housing and building codes should be something I think that we have more opportunity to do something with. But you have to also remember, not only do the towns have problems with the funding, the state has its guardrails, and the guardrails limit the amount of money that the state will give to the towns. And when you get to Eastern Connecticut, we have a high number of very low-income towns.
We do.
And so to make sure that we can do more economic development here, we need to also make sure that we have a situation where we have good housing code enforcement, good building code enforcement, a real understanding by the people who work in these areas that are approving condominiums and new buildings or renovations of old buildings, that they really know what they're doing. And it sounds like that particular building, they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. Well, it's an ongoing struggle. And I just pointed out, not to attack people individually, but to show an example of how the system doesn't always work well. And all the parts have to function, or people just get a hard time.
Well, I would kind of say there's really not a good system, because there's a problem when you have resources that are not fully funded. So if you don't fully fund these things, so for example, here in Wyndham, Willimantic, you could do the code enforcement, right? And you can actually close the house down or whatever. But the town doesn't take the house because the town doesn't have the money to take it. Right. Whereas you go to Simsbury, I'll pick on Simsbury, and they have the money to take the property.
Sure.
They don't have that problem.
That's a reality check. That's fair.
So you have to really take a look at what we're doing, how we've underfunded places like Wyndham, Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, Waterbury, probably Putnam. All these places have not been getting the funds that they need because of the so-called spending cap that was enhanced by the so-called guardrails in 2017. And it's something that has been a real problem. We're doing beautifully in paying our debt, but we're not doing anything to actually address the real problem in terms of how do we fund our towns? How do we make sure these things are actually being addressed properly?
So I'm here in the studio with Susan Johnson today, and we're kind of giving you a little preview of what the program is about. Let's talk about it on Fridays from 4 to 5 with Dennis O'Brien and Susan together. They've been on the air since 1998. And the other programs that we've been covering, we all found a way to end on a positive note because we're recognizing so many positive changes are happening. And if you've been around here long enough, you know there's a history of struggle, but there is progress, and things are becoming more visible these days. So I guess, Susan, one thing I wanted to ask you about was so many years of shows behind you now. What are some of the stories you've seen that give you optimism when some people for a while were really down, they were kind of stuck in a negative frame, maybe they didn't see enough reconstruction? But what is it that keeps you going with the show and keeps you, with all the resources you have, positive when people are struggling, but things are turning, things are getting better, but not fast enough for anybody?
Well, I mean, we live in a democracy, right? So everybody's got to have a say. And part of the thing that we're doing here is we're making sure people get a chance to have their voice heard. And I think that a lot of the things that have really made me happy are getting 95% reimbursement for the renovation of Wyndham High. The opening of the Murray Building just this last month in June, that was a great thing, end of May rather. And so that was great. We're fixing a lot of Main Street. We have now, when you come over the Frog Bridge, you see a great area with a wonderful recreation center, the Shabu Stage. Yeah. All these things are great community and economic development things here in our town. And they're happening all throughout the state. We're really building up our infrastructure with money from the federal government and more cognizance on what we need to do to make our economy really take off.
So I just want to mention one more time that on YouTube, WILI Radio has its own channel with many programs. They're available for 24/7 access on your phone or on your computer anywhere. And the On the Homefront program that we're doing now with Susan is on my playlist. But Susan's program has two playlists. She and Dennis have a regular program that's there each week, but they have special shows set aside as classics. Maybe why did you set them up, and why did you decide that those stories are special, that you want to make sure people have a chance to enjoy them again?
Well, I think that was actually done by Colin Rice in the
Okay.
management here. So
All
we
right.
didn't actually realize that he was doing that, but
Wow.
we have seen them at set
Colin's
up.
choices, huh?
Yeah, Colin's choices.
All right.
And thank you, Colin, for that. We do
Yeah.
appreciate it,
Yeah.
and it makes us feel good to know that you appreciate the work that we're doing, because it's a great opportunity to get information out to the folks. And you know what, having this show and doing what you're doing here with talking to the other people who have shows
Yeah.
is enhancing connections with the community. One of the things that we've lost over the years because of the changes in manufacturing, the changes in how we don't have that much going on in manufacturing, is really kind of created a situation where people don't have that same sense of community. And what this ILI can do, what we can do now with a lot of the things that we've been able to develop here, is get that sense of community back and talk to our businesses, talk to people downtown, talk to the schools, and find out what's going on all throughout the community. We have a community center now. We have all kinds of things for the seniors in the community center, swimming pool. All these things are great functions. And it makes it so that we are going to start connecting more and more. Having the show with Matt Rupar before ours on Fridays is another way that we're connecting. And it's a way to tell Matt can say, hey, to his friends, hey, I got a show now. You got to listen to my show,
That's right.
And you have friends, and you got to say, hey, I got to listen to the Murphy Show on Wednesdays, and and I blast my stuff at the Capitol. So it's the way to make community again. And I know that this place has really struggled over the years. It's had those changes in the 1880s, and then the changes in the 1980s. That again, trying to figure out, well, how do we fit into the new economy, right?
Radio's trying to reinvent itself in so many
Yes,
ways. And, so many times when TV came along, part of why radio survived is the radio went local. It gave up the national platform to TV, and it went local. And it grew bigger than it was before. And that may happen now with the digital world, because you can travel the world on your phone, but you end up in your driveway. Mm-hmm. And that's where WILI comes in on a battery-operated radio when you lose power. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Sure,
right?
Yeah. And every week, I mean, you can get them. WILI is connecting because they're doing YouTube. They're doing cable access. And now we got to go for streaming.
That's right.
Once we get to streaming, I think we'll be really connected again, and we'll maybe have a way to connect with other communities in Connecticut that will be able to stream. So we'll be able to share more information and understand each other from town to town. Because one of the problems we have is 169 towns, and as I like to joke and say, 169 state municipalities. But really, if we knew more about our surrounding towns, we might have a little more understanding of why Connecticut's like it is.
All righty. Well, that's a great note to end our profile. Again, the program is Let's Talk About It, Fridays, 4 to 5 p.m. with Susan Johnson. 5 to 6?
We don't want to overtake
5 to 6 p.m. Okay. Homegrown is 4 to 6. We're going to get Matt Rupar to come from behind the curtain to talk about his great show. This is 5 to 6 on Friday. Dennis O'Brien, we hope you get better soon. Thanks for taking the time to be here. Wish you a good summer, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that's how we're going to wrap up the show this week. Thanks for sharing your time with us, and we'll see you next week here on the Homefront. Take care.